Okay, thank you, everybody. Welcome to this Cabinet meeting on the 8th of October 2024. We have no apologies for absence. May I ask if any members or officers have a declaration of interest to make on any item on the agenda? No, thank you. Minutes of the last meeting on the 17th of September. There are two sets of minutes, one regular set of minutes and one set of minutes for the exempt item. If I take them both together, are members happy that both sets of minutes are an accurate reflection of that meeting? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 4 is Chair's announcements. Only to say that it's, as ever, really positive to see that we've got two pieces of key regeneration work coming forward to Cabinet this evening under Councillor Lister's portfolio. Another sign that Northampton's really moving forward at this moment in time, and we look forward to seeing spades in the ground in the near future. But without much further ado, other than saying that there's no items of urgent business this evening, we'll move on to item 6, which is the West Northamptonshire tenancy strategy with Councillor Herring.
Thank you, Chair. Cabinet is asked to accept the new tenancy strategy for West Northants. A tenancy strategy is required under the 2011 Localism Act, and this document brings together the various legacy policies of the previous councils. It accords with the Council's overall policy for our citizens to live their best life. It proposes that fixed-term tenancies are only used in exceptional circumstances, and that tenancies in the main should be lifetime tenancies which promote stable and settled communities. New tenancies will be subject to a probationary period of 12 months, after which successful completion of the tenancy becomes a lifetime tenancy. Our partners, registered providers, will also be encouraged to adopt these principles. The policy has been out for consultation for 6 weeks for comments from tenants, registered providers, private landlords and community organisations, and the responses are detailed in the papers. And I'm happy to recommend that this is adopted. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Herring. We've got no speakers on this item now, but do any Cabinet members have anything to say? No, in which case I'll direct members' attention to the recommendation at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. Item 7 is the Council Tax Reduction Scheme for 2025-26, and Councillor Longley is going to take us through this.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm not actually going to say very much because there's nothing changed. It's exactly the same as it was, and to the best of my knowledge has been for the past few years. So it's really comes to this to the Cabinet because we have to do this on a yearly basis. So there you have it, and I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We've got one speaker on this, which is Councillor Randall.
Oh, thank you, Chair. I'll be very brief. I don't like the name, the wording, no change. There may be no change in percentage, but every time we put the council tax up, there is a change. So the change this year on average was on a band D, £84.54, which equates to 6.5 weeks of food vouchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Councillor Longley, would you like to respond?
I can't see that the scheme's changed. It's based on percentages.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's a fair point that residents, they still see an increase in cash terms. That's valid, but ultimately the level of discount in percentage terms is unchanged from last year. So reasonably straightforward in that regard. So do any Cabinet members have anything to add to the debate? In which case the recommendations as ever are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much. Item 8 is the Greyfriars framework, and I'll hand over to Councillor Lister.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is an ambitious regeneration project for Greyfriars. It's the largest brownfield site in Northampton Town Centre, but it's transformative initiative and it breathes new life into an area that's been derelict since 2015. What's our vision here? It's to build high quality mixed use housing and later life living options, new cultural and leisure facilities, revitalised Corn Exchange, green spaces, connectivity through improved transport routes and expanded and modernised Northgate bus station, which is very important, comes through very loud on the consultation. The historic Corn Exchange will be transformed into a cultural hub. Belgrave House will become a creative workspace. We're looking at new outdoor amphitheatre, a linear park that will run through the whole development. This is a £1 billion of development, 7,000 jobs worth during construction, 1,600 permanent jobs once operational, 140 million annual contribution to the local economy, £2 million in annual council tax and business rates, and 21 million in additional spending by new residents and visitors. We're looking at partnering with the English Cities Fund, which is a partnership between Homes England, Legal and General and Muse. This collaboration will begin with a pre-discovery phase where we will go through, decide what we want, work with those to decide how that site will come forward and deliver it together in partnership. I recommend it. It's a great opportunity for Northampton. It's a great opportunity for West Northamptonshire, and I commend it to the Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. We've got two speakers on this item, Councillors Harris and Purser.
Thank you, Chair. The comments or remarks I'm about to make, the leader is aware of, because we have discussed some of the points I'm going to raise already. I guess the key question is it would be useful to have a full understanding of timescales. So are we talking about a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year or beyond? The report doesn't really allude to that. I agree that on paper, the ideas look fantastic. The delivery on execution is clearly an entirely different thing. One big question I've got, though, is the mix of accommodation. It specifically in the report talks about 900 flats for students, and I know that the university are looking to try and relocate some of those people that are located elsewhere in town. However, we do have a massive social housing challenge, and we do have a massive social housing waiting list. So I would hope that in the pre-consultation or pre-discovery phase, as you described it, Councillor Lister, that we can really take a good look at those options and that viability to potentially create some communities within the town centre where we can actually try and get to grips with some of that social housing issues, because I think it does present an opportunity for that, and we shouldn't push that down to the bottom. We've got to make sure that that is discussed and thought about fully. A couple of other questions or points, really. I know it's early stages and it's pre-discovery, but what would the scenario be in regards to liabilities from an investment point of view? I raise that particularly because obviously we've got the Market Square where we've had an overspend situation which we had to fund. There's an item on the agenda later on this evening where we're looking again to fund for a school that we need to support. So some clarity around what that would look like from a risk profile would be very helpful. And I think that's it probably for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I absolutely welcome this report and want to congratulate the officers and the Cabinet members for bringing it to the stage where it's got to. At last, we have a report with the word master plan in it, which suggests that we've actually got a vision for what we're trying to do on a scale that brings different sites together. And I would have thought this is probably the biggest transformation in Northampton's town centre since the Great Fire. And I think if we think of what Mike Ingram used to say, that Northampton's been in decline since the late Middle Ages, maybe this is an opportunity to reverse that. A site of this scale gives that sort of opportunity. And and also gives us the opportunity to undo some of the worst elements of the damage that the old development corporation did to the centre of Northampton. And so I also welcome the kind of extension or the possible extension of this scheme to the top of Abington Street and the damage that the demolition of the Notre Dame development did to our town centre. And I think anything that we can do just to move it, I'm concerned about the little bits of grey on the master plan that are sort of in a no one's land position. Particularly just commend Holy Sepulchre Church and how that can be reconnected with its community, because that is one of our historic gems, really important historic, with some important social facilities there. It's a big site. It's got some important history and again, some real potential there. So I think we need to, hopefully, if the council can be in discussion with the diocese about that, I think there's some real potential there. As I talked about the master plan, I think it's really important that the council keeps control of the master plan, that we drive the development and not the developers. I know the developers will be putting a lot of money into it, but I think we've got to keep a grip of the actual plan and the way it all fits together and how it fits together with the rest of the town. It's going to need a boldness of vision from the council and also some outstanding architecture. It's really important that we get the architecture of this right. I'm also obviously on the social housing. How do we get the maximum amount of social housing while keeping a balanced development? I think that's the challenge for us. And obviously the economics have got to stack up as well. So there's a real challenge there to have a really good community with social housing and a balanced community. It's a long-term project. I think there's something about how do we make sure that there's the political commitment that can last 20 years, probably. I think that's an issue. And a question about how do we engage ward councillors in the scheme. Very important that local councillors are involved and owning the scheme as time goes on. And also, what's the governance structure that the council's going to have between in terms of just overseeing this, just to understand what that will look like, that again has got to stand the test of time. I'm aware that the chair's indulgence here. Yes, that's enough from me.
Thank you, Councillor Purser.
Thank you, councillors. I'll try and answer some of those. The delivery timetable in relation to this first part, there's about 9 months of this where we work out what we want on the site, but we work with ECF. And it answers a lot of these questions. You know, why ECF? ECF aren't just a development partner. They're a combination of, say, Homes England, Legal and General, Muse. They bring together lots of bodies together that will deliver something. So we get to work with them. It's not a case of us. Yeah. What we could do tomorrow is we could sell off the land, get a land receipt, and we would just have junk put on there effectively. What we do is we can work with ECF and say, this is what we want. So they actually fund all the money up front in terms of the master planning part of it, the discovery part, what we're looking for. If we then decide, actually, it's hideous, we're liable, I think 50% of that cost. I don't think that will happen. I think they want to work with us. We want to work with them. It's a great coup for Northampton and West Northamptonshire to have someone like ECF coming here and wanting to work, who tend to work in quite, lesser, more deprived areas even than Northampton. So we've got that delivery timeline. Then you've got the whole thing of coming together with a proper vision, the site plans, the planning permission, the licensing, all of that. Of course, Jane's team will be involved. Housing will be involved from a social housing perspective. This is for us. This is a great opportunity for us to work with a developer who's keen to put money in, who's keen to develop the site. Obviously, they want to get value out of it as well, but it's for us to get parts out of it that we want to work for us as well. So it's not just about putting thousands of student accommodation or things like that on there. Yeah, vision for what we're trying to do. I agree, it is the biggest change that we've had in years, and it's really exciting, I think. But all of these parts are coming together. There was the previous borough master plan, and there's been a lot of delivered on that. But this is a huge site, and it's a real great opportunity for us to fix some of those wrongs that we've had before. To look at the bus station site, be able to deliver something that people in Northampton are really proud of. That hangs together, and that's why the Corn Exchanges site was so important, because it starts to tie the sites like the Market Square up until to Greyfriars. So governance structure, we work with ECF, they're a part of us. We want to see that delivered. We'll agree the vision up front. That's what they're delivering on. That's what we want them to deliver on. I think I've answered everything. Liabilities, again, we agree up front what's going to be delivered. And then, they're delivering it effectively. They own it. I think that's answered everything. But obviously one at Holy Sepulchre as well. Quite happy to link those together if we can, get them in the vision somehow as well. Thank you.
Councillor Golby.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just as I said at the last meeting, very positive about the development here and the opportunity that it presents the town and the wider district. And I'm pleased that Councillor Percival also recognises this opportunity. Thank you.
Just a couple of minor points from me as well, which is that firstly, that ECF wouldn't usually take on a project of this size. It's smaller in scale than the sorts of projects that they're used to taking on in Salford and elsewhere in the country, but they've seen the potential of working in Northampton, and they've been won over by the ambition of our regen team and the council as a whole, which is a huge fillip for us. I'd also point out that at 2.4 in the report, just the level of consultation that we've been through so far, over 2,500 responses to this initial phase of consultation. And my aim is to carry on taking the populace with us as we get down into the finer detail of what's going to be delivered on that site, and communicate really effectively about what Greyfriars is going to look like and when that will come to fruition. So was there anything else that you wanted to conclude with, Councillor Lister? Okay, thank you very much. The recommendations are before you all at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Agreed, thank you. Item 9 is the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board Annual Report for 23-24 with Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Chair. So this is the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adults Board Annual Report, as you mentioned, 2023-2024, and outlines the board's activities, achievements and strategic priorities over the past year. The board's mission is to ensure local safeguarding arrangements protect adults with care and support needs from abuse and neglect. So the main key achievements and notable points in the report include the strategic plan 2023 to 2026. So the board retained its 3 main priorities, notably prevention, quality and making safeguarding personal, or MSP as it's referred to, and objectives were expanded from 5 to 11 to address emerging trends. Safeguarding adult reviews, or SARS, the board conducted several SARS, identifying key learning points and recommendations to improve safeguarding practices. And these are described in the report, and if you read through them, they're quite difficult and sobering reading. Partnership working, reports of strong collaboration with statutory partners, including North and West Northamptonshire Councils, Northamptonshire Police and NHS Northamptonshire Integrated Care Board were highlighted. Engagement and communication, the board enhanced its communication strategy, including new animations and promotional materials to raise awareness of safeguarding issues. Learning and development, 2 weeks of learning were held with high participation rates, and the board also developed bite-sized learning videos and practitioner guides. So the challenges remain the cost of living, and the board noted increased vulnerability of adults with care and support needs due to economic pressures. Our new communities, the arrival of refugees from Afghanistan and Ukraine presented new safeguarding challenges and capacity issues. Some partners face capacity issues impacting their ability to engage consistently with the board's activities. In terms of finances, the board's income from the year was just over 200,000, with expenditure totaling 160,000. Key expenses including staffing, SAR reviewer costs and marketing, and as a request going back to previous reports. There's now additional resource managing the workload of the board. So future priorities include embedding making safeguarding personal principles, or MSP, as I mentioned, ensuring that safeguarding practices are person-centered and outcome-focused. 2, improving data intelligence, continue developing a robust dashboard to monitor emerging safeguarding issues, and enhancing transitional safeguarding, supporting young adults transitioning from children's services to adult services. So overall, the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Adult Board Annual Report 23-24 demonstrates significant progress in safeguarding adults in Northamptonshire. The board remains committed to continuous improvement and adapting to new challenges to ensure the safety and well-being of vulnerable adults in the community. So I recommend it to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. We've one speaker on this item, Councillor Randall.
Yeah, thank you. Just looking at the statistics, which are on page 32 and 33, it was quite significantly different from the north to the west. Most of the percentages were on abuse, but in the west, we've got a much higher level on the 18 to 64-year-olds. And I wondered if there was a reason. Do we know a reason why? Because in the north, it's 37%, but in the west, it's 52%. I just wondered if there was a reason. Thank you.
I don't know if Stuart Lackenby has an answer for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Really good question. So my understanding is that there are 2 kind of things that are influencing our numbers, particularly around under 65s. So when the county council split, the vast majority of people with a learning disability with really, really complex needs who had previously been in NHS campus settings were resettled into West Northants. So this is a group of people who quite often can have behavioural challenges, which means we have a much higher percentage than our colleagues over in the north. We've also, within West Northants, done quite a lot of work around safeguarding concerns pertaining to those people who sit on the cusp of Care Act eligibility around drug and alcohol misuse problems and issues that then prevail into homelessness issues. So because of some of the increases we've seen, particularly in Northampton, that equally is reflected within those percentages.
Thank you, Stuart. There's no further speakers, no indication of anyone wishing to speak. Councillor Golby, did you wish to add anything?
No, other than the point that, as I mentioned at the end there, the board is continually reflecting upon its performance and challenging itself to get better. And that's something we should encourage. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think it's just worth reiterating our thanks to everyone working on that board for all the work that they do. The recommendation is merely to receive and note the findings of the report. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Item 10 is with Councillor Hallam. It's the Enterprise Resource Planning System Cloud Hosting.
Thank you, Leader. Another relatively straightforward one. This system is actually really complicated. It's kind of at the heart. It's the system that's the central piece of the jigsaw that ties us all together. This will enable us to have a contract extension, which gives us the maintenance that we need to then go out to tender and tender a new solution. And because it's so complex, this isn't going to be a quick fix. So it will give us up until 2029 to do it. So simple as that, really.
Thank you very much. We've just got Councillor Randall speaking on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, my only question was on 5.4.2, Obviously, the councils all come together before on this contract. And the expiry date was due to be 2040. So I just wondered how they're allowed to end it now, really. Was it not that we didn't secure a contract that oversaw the maintenance side of it as well, or was it that a failing in that?
No, there's no failing in it. I mean, it's standard practice to have a contract for this system and then maintenance or support extensions. So it's completely standard practice in the industry. So I don't see it as a failing.
Thank you. No further speakers, no indication of members wishing to speak. The recommendations are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Back to Councillor Golby for item 11. It's the Northamptonshire Tobacco Control Strategy.
Thank you, Chair. So the report introduces the Northamptonshire Tobacco Control Strategy developed by Northamptonshire Tobacco Control Alliance. It seeks Cabinet approval for West Northamptonshire Council to note the strategy and sign the local government declaration on tobacco. So the strategy, created by a coalition of local authorities, including the NHS, Fire Police and VCSE representatives, aims to make Northamptonshire smoke-free by 2030. Key actions include signing the local government declaration on tobacco and implemented a comprehensive plan to reduce smoking prevalence. So the background is that the control plan 2017 to 22 plan for England set out ambitious goals to reduce smoking prevalence. The Northamptonshire strategy aligns with national objectives and local health plans aiming to reduce adult smoking prevalence by 9% to 9% by 2027 and to achieve a smoke-free status or less than 5% prevalence by 2030. So key areas of focus include leadership of governments, smoking cessation, prevention, advocacy, enforcement and communication, and all the work around those specific areas. So in terms of information, an information plan is in development. Detailed actions and timelines for each focus area are included. The strategy emphasises collaboration across sectors and targeted interventions for high-risk groups, including those with mental health conditions, diverse ethnic backgrounds and socio-economic challenges. In terms of finances, the current WNC public health spend on stop smoking services shown at 7.1 in the report, and this funding comes from both the public health grant, and we have additional stop smoking funding allocation from OHID, which is the government department. So these two total nearly £800,000 of money, which is obviously a very significant amount. The Northamptonshire Tobacco Control Strategy 24-27 is included in the papers for today, as well as the declaration we're requesting to be signed. So in conclusion, we were asked to sign the local government declaration on tobacco, which will publicly affirm the council's commitment to smoke-free Northamptonshire, leveraging local efforts to reduce smoking and health inequalities and improve community well-being. So I recommend the report to Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Golby. We've got Councillor Purser speaking on this.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome this report and welcome that you're going to be signing it on behalf of the council. And just to stress the importance that everyone has in putting this strategy into practice. It's important that young people don't start smoking, that people, if they do start, smoke for as short a time as possible, that we have good enforcement through public environmental health service, and people are given opportunities to quit as often as possible. Just bringing it back to our central lab group, COPD is our key, one of our two key aims, key targets, and really smoking is the main contributor to that still. And what I was wanting to stress is that we need to be working not just with those who actively want to quit, but also people who paradoxically don't want to quit. you can do quite a lot of useful interventions at the pre-contemplation and the contemplation stage, as well as the people who want to act on it. And I would just encourage all the agencies, and it very much is at the primary care end of things, and the non-specialist addiction people, so people who are not addiction workers, who have a key role in identifying and pointing out the benefits of stopping smoking. And I think that's the challenge we've got in our lab, is to how to get that message through to those frontline staff. So that's a bit of a technical kind of point, but anyway, I thought it worth making.
A good point. Thank you, Councillor Purser. Councillor Golby.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for the comments, Bob. I'm well aware of the very good work actually that's going on in the central lab around COPD, and I also know that it won an award very recently, I think, as well. And I think the key part of that is getting through to the communities and getting them to understand the effects of smoking and other or health choices, perhaps, shall we say. So yeah, the point around primary care is very valid as well. So we'll take your comments and I'll pick them up with Sally when we speak next and see what more we can do. Thank you.
I'll only add that as I'm going to be signing this, I really welcome it. I know from bitter personal experience the effects that smoking can have on a person's health, and I think it makes it a moral obligation on the council to do everything it can to prevent smoking uptake. So it's really important work, and we should continue to do it. Recommendations are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Item 12 is with Councillor Baker. It's the Northamptonshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership Annual Report for 23-24.
Thank you, Chairman. The partnership is required to produce and publish an annual report that provides an overview of the partnership's achievements against the National Safeguarding Children's Partnership Business Plan. The annual report has been developed with contributions from all of our statutory partners and has been reviewed and approved by the NSCP strategic lead representatives. West Northamptonshire Council is just one of 5 strategic leads representing the multi-agency Northamptonshire Safeguarding Children's Partnership, which is a statutory requirement of the Working Together to Safeguard Children guidance. All partners share responsibility for safeguarding and promoting the welfare of children and young people, and are expected to support and to deliver the highest standards of service. The report details the purpose of the partnership, which is to safeguard and promote the welfare of children in Northamptonshire and ensure the coordination and effectiveness of the services provided to our children, young people and their families by member organisations. The annual report includes quantitative and qualitative data, key messages, and details the impact of activities that relate to the 3 priorities set out in the NSCP business plan. That is neglect, exploitation, and domestic abuse. Page 28 and 29 details the plans for 24-25, and this includes hearing the voices of children and young people, engaging the voluntary sector, create new governance arrangements for the partnership aligning to the requirements of working together to safeguard children, embedding learning and evidence impact, strengthening child safeguarding practice review processes, and revising the multi-agency safeguarding hub that we know as the MASH. This is a statutory requirement on our behalf to publish this report yearly. This is the report as you can see before you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. We have 2 speakers on this. It's Councillors Squires and Randall.
Thank you, Chair. I've read the report with interest. One thing did stand out actually when reading the report, which is on page 22. We're talking about elective homeschooling. I read the numbers of the homeschooling has increased substantially over the last year. In fact, the last report I saw that went to one of the committees said there was now over 1,200 children, and these figures are well over the national average. And yet, when I read the action plans on page 28 of the report, I see no mention of this issue. Surely each one of these children is a potential safeguarding issue, and that these children are out of sight. I'm a chair of governors for a major academy in Northampton, and this sort of thing does worry me, as safeguarding is at the heart of what we do at the school. Should we not be focusing on these children, find out why they're not at school? How many are sent or excluded children, taking an easy option? And importantly, having a plan to get them back into mainstream schooling. I know Councillor Sally Bearsworth asked for scrutiny to have a look at this topic in depth. Can you give me some assurance that this will actually happen? In my view, this is a potential safeguarding issue that could have some reputational damage for the council if we ignore it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I too share that concern. The one thing that I wanted to raise was child death. So in the expected children's death in 2019-20, it was 25. It's now jumped up to 46. I wondered if we knew the reason for that as well, whether it's down to poverty or what it may be. Thank you.
Thank you both. Look at our DAS in the corner to see if there are any.
Yes.
So in relation to electively home educated, we did see those numbers increase as we saw them nationally as a result of the pandemic. That created particular challenges, particularly for those children who had anxiety around going back into school, which has meant that those numbers have kind of prevailed. When we look at those children who are electively educated at home, each parent has a legal right to actually educate their child at home. And when you look across those children, there are children who flourish, but there are also children that we would probably agree we could support them differently around getting them into school. It is something that we monitor on a regular basis, and it is something that we're happy to go through to scrutiny to provide that level of assurance. And I think we previously flagged that. It was, we actually did take that through,
Yes.
was it last week?
The last 24th of September.
So just to clarify, scrutiny published a report on the 24th of September on that issue. Okay.
As Stuart said, there's many reasons why children are electively home educated. We do know of most of them. We have a register of those parents who say they're going to electively home educate. Some of them are children with SEND who are waiting for school placements. Some of them are unaccompanied asylum seeking children. There's quite a mixture of different children, but we actually do know who they are and where they are. And as to the child death, we would have to get the entire detail, but I understand now that they actually do include stillbirths in that figure as well as actual children who have died. So that is now raising the number. This, I think, is probably the answer to that. They're nodding, so that must be right.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. There's no other indications to speak. Did you want to make any further comment before we wrap up?
No, I think it's a very intense and well attended safeguarding partnership that we now have. I've been through many iterations of this partnership, and I think we are now, once we sort out who our next chair is going to be, we are in a really good position to move forward, because we've now got really good and stable full-time people in there, and they're not just, we are working together rather than one blaming the other is really what has happened in my experience early on and in the past. So we're in a very good position now to go forward, I think. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendation is just to receive the report and note the findings. So we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 13 is back with Councillor Hallam. It's the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman Annual Performance Review 23-24.
Thank you, Leader. It's worth noting in all of this really the large increases in caseload that I think we've all seen. And my health warning on caseload is I honestly believe things are going to get increased further before long. But in that context, we have seen a 25% decrease in number of upheld complaints. These are obviously complicated cases, and if you look at the breakdown, you'll see that the vast majority of them are in education, and there's some in adults as well. Very, very few in other areas of the council. Now, timings have been looked at extensively following this letter, and a number of new measures have been put in place, particularly around the handling within the education side of things. And we've also volunteered as a trial partner to work to the new regulations that are due out in 2025, but we're working to those now, putting us ahead of the curve. As I mentioned, they are obviously complicated cases, so perhaps pass to Councillor Baker, who may in turn want to pass to Sir Lackenby, just to add some further details.
Councillor Baker.
As it says in the report, 21 investigations in 2024, 10 related to education issues. Complaints about special educational needs remains a key area, and as well know is significant pressure for the local authority. This continues to be the case and is due to the very increased demand for EHC needs assessments and a shortage of educational psychologists. I know we've said that before, but that is still the case. The Education Service has appointed a dedicated lead in education for SEND to respond to complaints and ensure we stay in touch with people who are facing delays or have had reason to complain. The report details some criticism around the timeliness of responses and the delivery of recommendations. This is now overseen weekly by the Assistant Director for Education and the Director for Children's Services. So it shows some improvements in complaints handling for the Education Service to date, and also an increase in complaints. This will continue due to the increased demand and also the current assessments that are out of time scale. This will also likely include an increase in financial remedies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. I'll just add myself that halfway down at page 298 under your organisation's performance, the Ombudsman made some observations about how the council had failed to provide timely information to the Ombudsman itself. I've raised this directly with the Chief Executive. She's accepted that fell short of her expectations, and steps have been taken to ensure that moving forward we are absolutely responding to requests from the Ombudsman and any other independent bodies or government bodies in a timely fashion. So that said, we'll move on to our speakers, who are Councillors Squires and Randall.
Thank you, Chair. You did answer part of my question, but the other concern I've got is on the 4th paragraph, where it states we raised similar issues in last year's letter. So that was 1 year, now it's happening again. So the previous year, the Chief Exec must have said the same thing. So how can I be assured that things really are going to improve this time? Thank you.
All I'd say to that is I wasn't party to the conversations the previous year because I was deputy leader and not leader at that point, but I certainly raised that particular comment from the Ombudsman in very strong terms with the Chief Executive. I don't find it acceptable, nor does she, but the Deputy Chief Executive may wish to come in at this point.
Thank you, Chair. So we have put a significant infrastructure in to make sure that we are never in a position whereby we are falling foul of the Ombudsman's timescales attached to this. That being said, we accept that there are 10 cases where we haven't delivered against our expectations in how we've supported children. Now, this next bit isn't to kind of excuse where we are, but it is to provide context. When you look at the National Ombudsman report for 23-24, we're now in a position where over 25% of all complaints submitted to the Ombudsman pertain to special educational needs and disability. we're in a position whereby of those 25%, 79% of them are upheld by the Ombudsman. So nationally, the Ombudsman is recognising that the challenges that we're encountering in West Northampton on a day-to-day basis are being experienced across other authorities. What I can say is we've really prioritised how we're dealing not just with the response to the Ombudsman complaints, but actually how do we prevent complaints from escalating to that point in the first instance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hallam.
Yeah, I think, that's been a good contribution from everybody here, but I think the key thing that I want to see is that the trend moving forwards is going in the right direction, which it is, but I absolutely cannot promise that we won't see that casework load increasing. My bet, if you like, is that around the budget, we will see a record number of calls coming into this authority. So as the caseloads go out, it provides more of a challenge. But I think it's been a good summary, and obviously we're working hard to address this. Happy to present the report.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. I don't think anyone else is gesturing to speak. So the recommendation is simply to note the performance and the approach to ongoing learning and improvement from resident feedback. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Item 14 is back to Councillor Lister. It's the Horizon House regeneration opportunity.
Thank you, Chair. This is another significant regeneration opportunity, this time involving Horizon House. It's a locally listed 19th century building in Northampton Town Centre. For those who don't know, it was the former home of Northampton Gas Company. It's been sitting derelict since the council purchased it from National Grid in 2017. John Lobb, a luxury boot and shoe manufacturer, has approached the council with interest in purchasing the site. The plan they have is to convert it into a 40 to 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility, which would employ 120 people with potential for triple that number. It would include a public shop, modern eco-friendly facilities, and employee amenities like communal spaces and EV charging. The council is recommending the sale to John Lobb rather than pursuing their original plan for a creative and cultural workshop space. It's supported by several factors. The sale price matches the independent market valuation. It preserves a locally listed building, and it would keep a prestigious footwear manufacturer in Northampton, enforcing the town's reputation in luxury footwear. The development would complement the adjacent 4 Waterside project, which will bring a 150-bed hotel, office space and residential units to the area. The sale includes protective conditions, ensuring the development proceeds as planned, with the council retaining the option to buy back the property if the project doesn't move forward. The project represents a significant opportunity to regenerate a brownfield site, create jobs, strengthen Northampton's position in the luxury footwear industry, all while preserving an important piece of local heritage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lister. We've got 2 speakers on this item, Councillors Harris and Purser.
Thank you, Chair. I'm taking, well, the question I'm going to ask, I'm actually dealing with offline. So I'm aware that there are obviously ongoing negotiations. So I'm not going to talk about any financial figures in this forum. But there is a question that I think is important for us to understand and get a grip on, which is how does it compare against the original purchase price made by the Borough Council versus the sale price? As I'm not going to talk about numbers. But I do think that that's important that at the appropriate stage, we have a full understanding of what that looks like. I'm thinking about some of the historic other sites that we know we've had some of those issues that we've discussed before. Notwithstanding that, this is clearly a very sensible opportunity to pursue. It's rather like taking a new future with an important heritage industry. So I think, on that basic principle, I would have no issue with it at all. I think it's eminently sensible. I guess the point that was just mentioned was buyback option. I think, again, can we have clarity that that buyback option, if it's needed, is at the price that it's sold at, so that there's no issues around that, again, for the same reasons that I've just alluded to. And hopefully, obviously, it's got to go through the planning process. And I know that there have been some issues raised, I think, historically about access and so on. It's on quite a tricky roundabout. But hopefully that all of those issues will go through planning appropriately and be dealt with in that manner. So that's my fundamental question. That question has already been asked offline, but I think it's important that we have understanding of that from a transparency point of view. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Purser.
Yes, those were the two questions I was going to raise as well. You know, that we learn the lessons from the bus station debacle, the old bus garage debacle. Just to make the point that, and to support that we're supporting the shoe industry in Northampton, and that we have a modern dynamic shoe industry, which is very important. The Gasworks building is part of our heritage, and there's an active heritage group seeking that promotes knowledge about the gas company and its history, and also the history of the Unson family who were tied up in it. And why is this building called Horizon House? It really should be called John Unson House. I would suggest, to keep a knowledge of that important engineering family who were involved in electricity, gas and water, and the provision of those in the Victorian period when they first were brought to the town. So I would hope that we can make sure that those bits of our heritage can be celebrated, as well as passing the building on as well.
Thank you, councillor Purser. Councillor Lister.
Thank you. Yep, understand what you're saying, original versus sale price. Yeah, I've seen the email. So yeah, certainly we'll make sure you're fully appraised of that situation. Certainly, we know the bus depot situation, and the buyback is correct in that we'll be able to purchase it back at the purchase price that they paid for us from. So we've learned, you know, I'm a big fan of the heritage, so I'm sure unless they're calling it John Lobb House or something, I'm sure that they'll look at something for that. So I think that covers everything. Just recommend it to the council. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Golby.
I just wanted to speak in support of this. I think it's another fantastic opportunity coming forward. Another piece of real key regeneration on a landmark site that brings heritage and in our industrial archaeology, if you like, with the shoe industry right in the heart of Northampton for everybody to see. So very positive.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's worth making the point as well that this isn't simply a local boot and shoe manufacturer. This is a company owned by Hermes, an international luxury brand, and they're putting their faith in Northampton and in the local economy and investing in our local area, which is something that I think we should all be proud to see. So thanks once again to our Regen team for setting up this opportunity and for seeing it through. And we wish everyone luck with the planning process. Without in any way preempting the outcome of any planning application, of course. The recommendation is at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Item 15 is with Councillor Hallam again. It's the Company Governance Subcommittee.
Thank you. This is a result of a CIPFA report following a number of high-profile sort of areas where this has gone wrong at councils. I think Nottingham was one example. I think Croydon had a bad experience as well as some others. There's actually, I think this is really good practice to get this in place moving forwards. Our risk profile in terms of this area is low, whereas somebody like Nottingham, we're obviously a private transport company and things like that, would be considered to be high. So I think there's a really good exercise moving forward, and it'll give us some good structure around that company governance. Happy to present it.
Thank you, Councillor Hallam. 2 speakers here, Councillors Harris and Purser.
Thanks, Chair. It's going to be a little bit of an echo of conversation that you and I also had last week, which is clearly this is a sensible recommendation of the overdue, but nonetheless, I think it's welcome. The comment I want to make specifically is we have an executive committee in the form of planning policy, and my proposal or suggestion would be that we should maybe consider actively modelling this new committee in a similar way. And the purpose for that realistically is to ensure that we do have additional voices and different views in the room. I was going to use the word opposition. I don't think that's the right phrase. It's more about different perspective and different views. Clearly there, because it's an executive committee, there wouldn't be voting rights, but I think the views and the voices would be an important thing to have. And it creates an additional layer of transparency. So that will be my recommendation. And I hope that can be considered thoughtfully, that we use the model we've got already for an executive committee and include representation from other groups in that. My only other question is, what's the timescales? How quickly are we actually going to implement it? Thank you.
Well, we're going to get working on it straight away. I don't have a date for a first meeting yet, but we can circulate that. In terms of your suggestion, sorry, I've jumped in early, but in terms of your suggestion, it's a really sensible one, because if you look at those big examples of, say, a council as a transport company or a communications company or whatever it might be, actually alternate voices are really going to be an important part of shaping that conversation. So I think we're certainly happy to factor that in.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I echo those comments, and I think the Planning Policy Committee is a good model, and I think it was important that it adds to transparency and accountability. I've long been concerned, as probably some of you here know, about the role of council nominees on some of these bodies like NPH. It has worried me for a little while about how I then fitted into, as a council nominee, coming back with issues to the council. I think this gives it some, formalises the structure really, and makes it, and does add to accountability and transparency in the process. So I think this is a really good proposal and tidies up things. I think there were some incidences of questionable practice in the old county council days and this would prevent that. So I think, it is a closer to home thing than some of the problems that have been in some of the other authorities. So this is a welcome step forward. It's good that Audit has picked this up. So well done to them.
Thank you, Councillor Pearce. I have to say, I think if it wasn't for the recommendation of the auditor, I'd probably lean more towards keeping these sorts of decisions simply as cabinet decisions at full cabinet meetings. But clearly we have that independent recommendation, so it's important that we take heed of that. Having had experience of sitting on Planning Policy Committee, it's a model that I found to be really productive. I think the voices from out with the executive members really contributed to the debate and gave us as executive members food for thought. And as Councillors Harris and Purser have said, provides an extra layer of transparency, and I think contributes to our adherence to the Nolan principles and staying true to the democratic process that we're all wedded to. So you can certainly have an undertaking from this meeting tonight that will seek to mirror that as closely as possible, make sure that there are other voices around the table other than the X number of executive members who hold the voting rights at that meeting. Councillor Hallam, anything further to add? Thank you. The recommendations are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Overston Park Primary School new build with Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Leader. This is a good news story in my view. West Northamptonshire Council is planning to build a brand new 2-form entry primary school to the northeast of Northampton in the Overston area, with planned opening date of September 2025. The school will provide 420 places and will meet the demand for primary education arising from the new housing developments in the area, and will operate as an academy run by the Northampton Free School Trust. The school has been designed working with the Academy Trust and the colleagues from West Northamptonshire Council. This school is expected to cost 13.6 million, which is in line with the average cost for building new primary schools. The costs come from a variety of sources, including Section 106 from the developer, Department of Education grants, and from council borrowing, which will be repaid through retrospective community infrastructure levy funding. So I can't see that there's anything to be concerned about here, other than making sure that they actually open on time, because we will have children ready to go there in September 2025. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We've got councillor Squires and Purser who may identify things to be concerned about, I don't know.
Thank you, Chair. As the newbie on the council, I need some clarification, and excuse me if I ask some daft questions. So I spent a career lending money to people, so I started to have a look at this, and it says that we need to borrow 2.2 million. Do we borrow that from external sources or internal sources? Either way, there must be a cost of borrowing. So my question is, can you tell me what the impact would be on our revenue if we go ahead with this? The report also states it's going to be repaid from SIL monies, but it doesn't say how long the borrowing will be for. Can you inform us the period for which this borrowing will be outstanding for? And can you also tell me if the SIL that we're using has been raised in the area in question, or does it come from a larger pot? So therefore, other areas which generated SIL would have contributed to this and probably expecting the money to come back to them. Therefore, what is the impact on other projects in the area as a result of using this 2.2 million SIL money on this build? Last question. The building work in the county rarely goes to time and cost. It appears that if we do it this way, then any cost increase or overspend will have to be borne out of extra borrowing. Has this risk been factored in? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My question is slightly different, which is why was the Section 106 money not sufficient for this school? Surely this should have been part of the negotiations when this greenfield site was developed. This is a prime development site with kind of maximum profit for developers. And it seems to me bizarre that there wasn't enough Section 106 money allocated to a brand new school for this area. So that's my question. Why was this not properly costed at the beginning? Second question is just to check that our building method here, which is not in any way related to the building method used at Buckton Fields, because that was a bit of a disaster. And I'm hoping that the GBFS system is sufficiently different to what went on there, because that was a complete waste of public money. And I hope we're not going to end up in that situation. So those are my two questions. And just checking that given that we're shutting down our blast furnaces, that there is going to be enough of this byproducts available for the school, I suppose.
I think we'll skip the debate on blast furnaces and go back to the detail on the detail raised by Councillor Squires and yourself, Councillor Purser. Stuart Timmis.
The reality is we'd fund it out of cash, and we always put borrowings in. But you're quite right; it should be a number in there. But we'll fund it out of cash. However, there is a cost to that, and that's the cost of what we would have got with it being paid to us, as you'll fully appreciate. I'm not going to talk about how to build it.
In terms of the planning aspects and the use of SIL is a big pot for West Northants. It doesn't relate, as does section 106. So two very different schemes. So again, doesn't really relate to particular areas. It relates to themes. So education, secondary education, road building, etc. So the whole point of SIL is it goes into one big pot for the demands and the priorities of the council. So hopefully that answers that particular question. In terms of how quickly will this come forward, again, very quickly. This is almost forward funding in advance of that. So I'm hopeful that by the time the school is built and opened, that the SIL has actually come back and already resolved that issue. But again, that's something that we will monitor. I'm more than happy to keep members informed of that. So obviously SIL is coming into the system all of the time. And again, we're working hard on that. In terms of the question, in terms of the why is there a shortfall? I think we've gone through some unprecedented cost inflations over the last 3 years. So if you go back to when the planning was permitted or approved, and that's when the section legal agreement was in place. If you look at construction over the last 10 years, it's probably gone up at a very small percentage. And again, I know your history, Carl, is in that development world, and Bob, you're sort of acknowledging that issue there. So yeah, it's all done. In terms of the expectation is this would have been enough. However, because the up to 30% increases we've seen, and again, we've done a hell of a lot of work in terms of looking at the costs, managing the costs, and getting the costs down to what it's actually turned out to be. So it's the cost inflation. But to assure members, we are working on the methodology, the formula as we speak, so that future applications come in will have the right amounts as we go forward. And we're looking at the formulas, working with finance, etc., to make sure that doesn't happen again. So we'll be looking at cost inflations, etc., to make sure that the developer does pay in regard to that. I believe I covered all of the questions there, Chair. Thank you.
And then I'll allow it. Only because we're doing well for time.
And I promise I'll keep that timing up. It's just a quick one in relation to SIL, really, which is, I think, given Stuart's description, that it goes into a big pot and it's for the whole of West Northants. I genuinely do think lots of communities don't see it that way. And certainly historically through the district councils, that was not the perception of SIL. There are lots of communities that still think they have SIL money for their area, for projects that are earmarked for them. So I think if that is now the case in the language we're using, that is very confusing for communities.
So back to Stuart.
Yeah, sorry, and that's without giving you whole detail of SIL and how it works, which could take half an hour. Sorry, I answered the specific question, which was, would communities lose out because we were putting it into there? Councillor Harris is exactly right. If you've got a neighbourhood plan for your particular area, then the parish and town councils of that area gets a percentage again. So there is a local element to SIL, which is there for that specific area. That hasn't changed, part of the legislation. So that's no change there. So again, that's separate to how the council then deals with its allocation, if that helps. So you're exactly right.
Councillor Smith.
You're just on SIL. So if you've got a neighbourhood development plan, it's 25% of the SIL, and without it's 15. So there is a benefit to localities, but there's obviously the bigger pot, which is for everybody.
Okay, I'll hand back to Councillor Baker to wrap up.
Thank you. There is always an element of SIL put into the education pot, and this is the pot that we use to do extensions to schools and all sorts of other good things that we've been able to do across West Northamptonshire to add SEND units, etc., etc. And I just wanted to pick up on the fact that we do have now really strict guidance on our building programmes, don't we? And the ones that we currently have are, I'm touching the wood table and I'm promising Martin this, but our big projects at the moment are on time and on budget. So we have got a good team monitoring all of those things. And I just want to remind everybody that we have a statutory obligation to educate children and find them school places. So this school is really needed in that area. Thank you.
Sorry, Chair, I didn't answer one of the questions, and that was in relation to the school which has had to be demolished because of the method of construction. Again, that was a school which was built and developed by the DFE. So it was a DFE contract. That contractor went bust as a result of the practices. The council's never engaged in that, and the only role we had was to help and support the school in the transition. So again, the construction methods that we've got here are very much the the usual that many schools have been built with over many years. There's no risk to the construction at all. So, but good question. Thank you.
Thank you. The recommendations are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Thank you very much. And finally, we have the Household Support Fund 6 proposal for the distribution of funds and recipients for said scheme. Councillor Golby.
Thank you, Leader. So the Household Support Fund has been extended for a 6th tranche, which we obviously welcome. West Northamptonshire Council has been allocated £2,465,491.77 for a further 6 months of funding. This funding is expected to be delivered against guidance provided by the Department for Work and Pensions, but also allows for local authorities to use informed rationale and local knowledge of their population to define the individual strategy and approach. The previous 5th tranche of the Household Support Fund ends this month on the 31st of October. It has had the same budget, and returns show to date that over 50,000 awards haven't been made across West Northamptonshire. During this delivery, efforts have been made to align the Household Support Fund distribution with the anti-poverty strategy. This has enabled successful close cross-working with our VCSE partners, allowing us to maximise the reach and support available. Recognising during the Household Support Fund is not a permanent fund, collaborative work has been ongoing for several months to establish ways in which to limit the impact on residents and support organisations in the at the end of the fund. Continuing with this approach, the strategy for delivery of the 6th tranche of the fund aims to provide long-term sustainable support to residents, focusing on offers and awards that can provide sustenance beyond the end of the funding period. This approach is also favoured in the DWP guidance. This guidance also encourages the use of the fund for preventative support. Awards and funding will be provided in conjunction with wraparound support services provided by our VCSE and service partners, who are best placed to tailor support to individual circumstances and needs. This will also sit alongside targeted multi-agency events and enhanced promotion intended to highlight and signpost residents to the wealth of experience support services available via our partners. We're requested to endorse the proposed strategy and spending plan for the allocated fund monies until the end of March 2025. The DWP guidance is included in the report, and there is a chronology of the previous versions of the Household Support Fund within the report. As previously, I would like my ask government that we would like the Household Support Fund to continue beyond this tranche, and that moving forward we'd like confirmation and guidance sooner, so we have better chance to work with our partners and make plans around how we spend the money allocated. Finally, I would like to recognise the work of the team in both the Household Support Fund and the Anti-Poverty Strategy Working Group, which was created as a priority for this administration and laid the foundation and organisational infrastructure to reach as many of our residents as possible. And I'm very happy to present the report to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. 3 speakers on this item, Councillors Harris, Purser and Randall.
Thanks, Chair. I'd just like to echo those words. This, of course, is welcome. People are still struggling. My only comment or observation would be that the challenge, of course, still remains, and I still am concerned and worried that we're not actually fixing underlying problems in society. Yes, it helps people. Clearly, it helps people. But I still worry that there will come a day when this fund isn't available and doesn't exist, and we still have lots of legacy problems left behind. I just wanted to clarify something. It sounds like we're pretty much mirroring the Household Support Fund 5 in terms of the approach that we're taking. Obviously, I'm involved in a food larder, and that's been one of the ways that we've seen major benefits in terms of being able to buy food stock and make sure it gets distributed appropriately. Versions before that have involved some direct targeted voucher schemes and systems for people. It is a reality regularly that people come to larders in my area and talk about when's the next one, when do I get my next voucher? And that's a risk, of course, because again, we are potentially building in innately some dependency. If we're doing it in the way we did it last time round, I feel more comfortable because it is more sustainable than simply passing a voucher directly to an individual. But I do think we need to make sure we have a really good communications plan that sits around this so that people understand how it works. They know that we've changed the approach perhaps to the earlier versions where they were getting a direct voucher. In this current system, I think it goes further and adds and definitely benefits more people potentially than just that individual voucher. But we still have people that think they're just automatically going to get another voucher. And I think we just need to have a good comms plan around this if possible, please.
Thank you. I was quite surprised actually after your motion at full council that there was no individual mention of pensioner poverty. I did expect to see something in there around that. I still have concerns about how we make sure we're reaching everybody that we need to. And that came about in the motion that we put forward. And about how we use so many more different agencies to make sure that we are reaching all those really, really hard to reach people. The winter coat voucher, that is another one that really concerns me, and how that was going to be distributed. And I wondered if that was going to be something that would be distributed by schools, because, you know, most of the children that go to school can easily be identified. If it's a voucher for somewhere like Tesco or somewhere, you know, how we, you know, some parents, if they live in a village, they can't get to a shop to get a coat in the first place. And how do we know that that voucher is going to be spent on a school, you know, on a coat for school? So for me, I just wondered if there could be any involvement, you know, with the school. Thank you.
Thank you. Hand back to Councillor Golby to respond.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll start with Wendy's points. In terms of pensioners, of course, pensioners are included in the scheme, and that has been a feature of the Household Support Fund since the very start, and they are included now. And I know there are initiatives, work with the voluntary sector to make sure that pensioners are included. And of course, I know there's been lots of questions since the removal of the winter fuel payments, and I've asked to what are we doing to make sure we're covering off and making our money go as far as possible. And I've got a whole list of things that we are doing to help support people access pension credit, etc. In that particular area. In terms of the coat scheme, I will check to find out exactly what is happening and perhaps come back to you on that one. Councillor Harris's point around sustainability, and that was one of the main parts of the criteria of the last tranche of funding, and the way we look to change to try and make things or make the system or help the system to become as sustainable as possible. And over the course of all the household support funds, there's been lots of learning, and I think we are going to roll out things in this tranche that are pretty much the same as we did in the last one. So we are looking to try and help the system move away from people being dependent. You know, one of the first things of the anti-poverty strategy was being quite reactive, and the next sort of part of it has been how we look to help our partners and help people to move to more of a sustainable footing moving forward. And we have always expected the Household Support Fund to actually end, although we are always very grateful when we get a notification that it is continuing. And again, we'd like it to continue further, but accept that it was originally put in place to help people post-COVID to cover those in particular areas of hardship. So yeah, again, I'm very happy to move the report to Cabinet.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Golby. Just worth pointing out that pensions are mentioned at 6.5 in the report. They're amongst a wider cohort of people who we're targeting through this scheme. But what the first question I asked when we were putting together the local iteration of HSF6 was how can we gear this towards pensioners who are just the wrong side of that line for qualifying for a winter fuel payment these days. And through the warm packs and through other forms of discretionary support, we're able to target those people. And I hope and pray that it's effective over the coming winter. Unfortunately, the DWP, as you'll see on pages 356 and 357, didn't provide any specific advice on targeting pensioner poverty in the latest iteration of Household Support Fund. So we had to we had to think creatively on a local level and anticipate how best we could guide the discretionary elements of the Household Support Fund towards that cohort who will be in need over the coming winter, and hopefully we've got that right. So as ever, the recommendations are at paragraph 3. Are we all agreed? Agreed. Thank you very much. There's no other business, no urgent business. So that concludes tonight's meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.